The latch shuddered as if something outside had learned the shape of Tom's door and was trying to become it. Sleety wind hissed through the cracks. At the table, the blue-horned woman sat perfectly still and said, "Don't open it. And when they say my name, don't look at me." The knocking wasn't loud. That was the worst part. It came with the calm precision of someone who knew the door would open eventually. 3 slow taps. A pause long enough for Tom's lungs to forget how to breathe. Then 2 taps, lighter, almost polite. Tom braced his shoulder against the oak, iron poker clenched in both hands, and watched the candle flame lean toward the threshold like it wanted out. Mud sucked at boots outside. A man cleared his throat. "Tom Grigg," a voice called, warm as a neighbor's greeting. "We know she's in there. Open up, and you won't be counted against." Across the room, the stranger's horns, deep river blue, wet with meltwater, caught the candlelight. She didn't beg. She only lifted her eyes and spoke like a verdict. "If you look at me when they call me by my name," she whispered, "your whole village becomes a doorway." And the voice outside said, almost kindly, "Lisa." Tom did not answer. He couldn't, not without letting his voice shake. The name, Lisa*, hung in the air like a hook, and his body wanted to turn, to check her face, to see if it hurt her. Curiosity pulled at him like hunger. He forced his gaze to the floorboards. The knot in the wood. The ash by the hearth. The dark stain where his father had once dropped a hatchet. Behind him the woman's cup clicked softly against the table. Not from trembling, more like she'd tightened her grip. Outside, Bram Holt's boots shifted. Leather creaked. Bram spoke again, patient, practiced. "Tom. You've got no wife to frighten, no little ones to hide behind. Don't make this a problem for the rest of us." Tom tasted smoke and fear. "Go home," he said, voice thick. A second voice, young, eager, slid in beside Bram's. "We can smell her. Like storm metal. Like wet stone." Tom's spine prickled. He kept staring at the floor. The woman's voice came low, close. "Do not answer them with your eyes," she said. "They want you to witness." "What are they?" Tom whispered. "Hunger with hands," she replied. The latch lifted slightly. "Someone testing. Not forcing, yet." Bram's tone softened, like he was offering mercy. "Open up, Tom. We'll take her. No blood in your doorway." Tom swallowed. "Take her where?" A pause. In it, Tom heard something heavy being shifted in the mud. Metal against wood. Bram said, "We brought insurance." Tom's stomach tightened. "What did you bring?" The woman's breath sharpened. "A bell," she said. "They stole it." The candle flame bent toward the door again, its tip flaring faint blue. Outside, Bram spoke the name again, louder, as if it were a handle he could pull. "Lisa." The air inside the cottage thickened. Tom felt it as pressure in his ears, like going underwater. The urge to glance back burned behind his eyes. He clenched his jaw and did not. The woman whispered, almost tender. "Good." Then, far off, down in the village, another bell rang once. Not the clean pull of a rope. Not the practiced Sunday toll. This strike sounded like something had hit the bell from the outside. Tom froze. Bram heard it too. His voice turned sharp. "Now, Tom. Open the door." And the first axe blow landed, splitting oak with a sound like bone. An hour earlier, Tom had been splitting kindling behind his cottage when the first knock came, small, uneven, almost ashamed. He'd opened the door with his lantern raised, expecting a neighbor in trouble. Snow blew in hard enough to sting his eyes. The thing on his threshold lifted its face. A woman, small-framed, dark hair clotted with snow, except for the horns curling from her temples. Not costume. Not antler straps. They rose cleanly from bone, smooth and polished, dyed a deep river blue that swallowed lamplight. Her hands were raw, cracked, bleeding into the snow. "Please," she said. One word, flat with exhaustion. Tom's first instinct was to slam the door. His second was to look over her shoulder. In the trees along the lane, lanterns bobbed. Voices carried in the wind, men calling, not panicked, but purposeful. "Hunters." The woman followed Tom's glance and spoke quickly. "One night," she said. "Shelter. Then I go." Tom's breath fogged. "What are you?" "A guest," she replied. "For one night. And one rule." Behind her, a shout grew nearer. A man's voice Tom recognized, Bram Holt, winter hunter, steady hand, village pillar. Tom's heart kicked. "What rule?" The woman's eyes locked on his, steady as a nail. "When they come," she said, "they will call me by a name. Do not look at me when they do." Tom blinked. "That's. It is everything," she cut in. "Your gaze is a latch." Another shout, closer. "There. Down the lane." Tom stood in his doorway with cold biting his ankles and the woman bleeding onto his step. He should have shut the door. Instead, something stubborn in him, pity, loneliness, defiance, moved his body. He stepped aside. "One night," he said. "That's all." She entered without hesitation. Snow melted off her clothes onto his floor. She did not wander. She went straight to the table, sat with her back to the wall, and watched the door like she'd been here before in other homes, other winters. Tom barred the door and turned, heart rattling. "They're hunting you," he said. "They think they are," she replied. "Why?" She looked at his hands, calloused, cracked, empty. "Because I lived," she said quietly. "And they needed someone else to carry what they did." Tom's mouth went dry. "What did they do?" Before she answered, the first knock from Bram Holt arrived. And the night began counting. Now the axe bit the front door again. A splinter flew into the cottage, skittering across the floor. Tom backed away, still facing the door, poker raised. He kept his eyes low as if the floorboards were the only honest thing in the room. "Tom," Bram called through the cracking oak, "don't be a fool." The woman rose. Tom heard the chair scrape softly. "Back door," she said. "You built one." Tom's throat tightened. "If we run, they'll ring it at your threshold," she whispered. "And then your house becomes the village's wound." Outside, the younger hunter shouted, "Break it." The bar groaned. Another blow, oak splitting wider. Tom retreated into the shed without turning, feeling blindly for the latch. Cold air poured in. Salted meat and hay smell wrapped around him. The woman moved past him, silent steps, colder than the wind, and slipped through first. Tom followed, eyes on the ground, snow blasting his face. They ran into the woods behind his cottage, branches whipping sleeves, sleet clinging to eyelashes. The hunter's boots crashed behind them, loud and sure. Lantern light flickered through trees like angry fireflies. "Where are we going?" Tom gasped. "To the boundary," she said. "The stone circle." "Yes." Tom's stomach tightened. The boundary stones were old enough that no one admitted knowing who set them. Children dared each other to touch them. Men crossed themselves when passing. Bram said the woods beyond were bad land and left it at that. Behind them, Bram's shout cut through trees. "Don't let them reach the ridge." The bell clanked as it was carried. Heavy. Patient. Like a jaw being brought to a meal. Tom's lungs burned. "Tell me the truth," he rasped. "What are you?" The woman didn't slow. I was a girl once, she said. And your village made a bargain with winter and called it survival. Tom stumbled on a root, caught himself, heart hammering. What bargain? Her voice turned harder. They chose offerings. Tom's mouth went numb. Children. A pause, brief, deadly. Yes, she said. Tom's breath tore. Rage flared, then disbelief, then an old, sick recognition of half-heard stories, missing boys blamed on river ice, a girl, taken by wolves, elders whispering that, the bell kept us safe. He kept running because stopping would mean looking back, and looking back would mean breaking a rule already stretched thin. The woods thinned. The ridge rose. Wind returned, biting. The stone circle emerged, gray slabs thrust from snow like ancient teeth. The woman slowed at the edge. Do not step in until I tell you. Tom halted, boots at the line. Lantern light flickered behind them, closer now. Bram's voice rose, breathless. Lisa. Come out. We won't cross the stones. The name struck Tom's nerves like a whip. His eyes twitched upward before he forced them down again. The woman stepped into the circle. The snow inside stopped falling. Tom felt it, air thickening, humming. Like a room holding its breath. She spoke, low and precise. Now you may step in. Tom stepped over the line. His ears popped. The wind dulled. The world outside blurred at the edges like a dream trying to forget itself. The hunters reached the ridge and stopped short, boots scraping snow. Bram held up a hand. Hold, he snapped. No one crosses. The younger hunter spat. Then ring it here. Bram's voice cracked. No. But the bell was already being set down, metal groaning into snow. Tom's stomach rolled. The woman's whisper reached him. If they ring it twice, she said, the village answers. And the answer is flesh. Tom's breath hitched. Then stop them. She didn't turn her head. I cannot stop hunger, she said. Only reveal it. Outside the circle, Bram called again, voice rough. Tom. Come out. That thing is poison. It brings emptiness. Tom stared at the snow between his boots, refusing to lift his gaze toward the woman or the hunters. His neck ached with strain. The younger hunter shouted, frantic. Ring it. Ring it. And the bell struck, one deep, resonant toll that rolled through Tom's bones. The stones under his feet vibrated. Far below, from the village, the church bell answered, one toll, slow as a heartbeat. Tom's blood turned to ice. The younger hunter laughed once, nervous. See. It hears. Ring it again. The woman whispered, no. But the bell rang a second time. Down in the village, the church bell answered, two tolls now, obedient, like a throat responding to its own name. Tom felt something shift in the earth. Not sound, attention star. And from beyond the ridge, from the direction of the village, a sound rose that Tom recognized with nausea. Knocking. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Not at his door. At every door. Panic cracked the hunter's line. Lanterns swung. Men muttered prayers they didn't believe. Bram's voice turned hoarse. Stop ringing. You fools. Too late. The bell's second strike had already taught the night what to do. Inside the stone circle, snow sank, not melting, but lowering as if the ground had opened its mouth. Dark soil appeared, wet and wrong for winter. A smell rose, damp clay, iron, rot. Tom's stomach twisted. He kept his eyes down, but he could feel it, something arriving, something listening. Outside the circle, a hunter screamed, it's coming from the village side. A dragging sound approached the ridge, slow, heavy, like something being pulled across frozen ground. Then a voice spoke, near, and not near, like sound rising through soil. Count. Men froze. Breath steamed. Lantern flames guttered, turning faintly blue at their tips. Bram whispered, "No." The voice repeated, patient. "Count." The woman's voice came close to Tom. "Do not run," she said. "Running is invitation." Tom's teeth chattered. "What is that?" "The collector," she whispered. "The one who makes bargains fair." The dragging sound stopped at the edge of sight. Silence thickened. Bram swallowed hard and tried to sound like a leader again. "We brought the bell for her," he said, more to the men than to the air. "We ring, it takes her, and we go home." The woman's reply was calm, deadly. "It does not come for me," she said. "It comes for what you owe." Bram's voice sharpened. "You don't speak here." The younger hunter shouted, trembling with fury. "Look at her. Look at what she is." Bram seized the moment and turned it into a weapon aimed at Tom. "Tom," Bram barked, "look at her. Look at her horns and tell me she's not the curse." Tom's neck muscles screamed. The urge to glance up burned behind his eyes. If he looked, he could decide. He could know. He could choose the right side. The woman's whisper snapped like a lash. "No." Tom clenched his jaw and stared at the exposed soil by his boots, at the tiny pebbles trembling as if something below breathed. Bram's voice turned crueler, desperate. "Lisa," he shouted, "you owe us." The name struck Tom's nerves. His eyes twitched upward. And then, like a man losing grip on a rope, he slipped. Just a fraction. Just enough to catch the blue curve of a horn in lantern light. The air snapped. The humming boundary became a doorway. The voice from the earth changed, deeper, satisfied. "Name." Tom's stomach dropped. Bram's voice went quiet with triumph. "There," he breathed. "Now it can see her." The woman inhaled sharply, pain, not fear. And Bram spoke again, slower, deliberate, as if pulling a nail from flesh. "Lisa. Varn." The second word hit the air like a brand. The candle's blue tips flared. Tom's gaze, already lifted, caught the woman's face fully. Gray-blue eyes like river ice. No pleading. Only sorrow so sharp it felt like punishment. "You looked," she said softly. And in that moment Tom understood the true horror. His gaze didn't show the collector where she was. It showed the collector where the village was. Because Tom had a home. Tom had memories. Tom had doors to point at. He had become the lantern. Outside the circle, the knocking pattern echoed from the village below, closer, multiplying. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. And the collector, satisfied with its new direction, began to walk downhill. They ran. Not in a clean chase, not like a hunt Tom understood, this was panic spilling into the woods. Hunters scattered. Bram shouted orders that no one obeyed. Tom and the woman followed the ridge path down, toward the village, because there was nowhere else for the consequence to go. It was already there. The knocking rhythm pulsed through the lanes now, audible even from the hillside, like the village itself had learned a heartbeat it couldn't silence. Tom's mouth tasted of metal. "I'm sorry," he rasped, not sure if he meant to her or to the sleeping houses below. The woman's voice was quiet. "Sorry doesn't close doors," she said. Lanterns appeared on the lane, villagers coming up the hill with pitchforks and iron, faces pale in firelight. May's voice rang out first. "Tom Grigg." Bram reached them too, breathless, eyes wild. "Where is she?" he demanded. Tom swallowed hard. He could feel the village's fear searching for a shape. It always did. Fear hated being formless. "She's here," Tom said, voice raw. Villagers murmured, tightening grips. Someone whispered, "Blue horns." "Which?" The woman stood beside Tom, still as stone, and the villagers' lantern light skated across her horns like cold flame. Then the church bell rang twice, slow, deliberate. 2 tolls that felt like a lock turning. A hush fell. Everyone knew the old phrase even if no one admitted knowing where it came from. When the bell rings twice, the village answers, asterisk. The knocking returned louder, 3, pause, 2, at doors in the lane behind the villagers. A scream rose from somewhere near the mill. May sobbed, "My sister." Bram's voice sharpened, cutting through panic like an axe. "To the church," he ordered. "Now." "We answer with a count." Tom's stomach dropped. "No." Bram's gaze pinned him. "You opened your door," Bram said. "Now you pay the price for it." Hands grabbed Tom. He fought, but the village moved like one animal when afraid. Rope bit his wrists. Boots dragged him toward the church, toward the open doors, toward candles that burned blue at the tips. The woman did not run. She watched. And her eyes, steady, sorrowful, told Tom the truth he didn't want. This was not a hunt anymore. It was a collection. And the village had decided the easiest thing to give away was the man who let a monster in for one night. They shoved Tom through the church doors like a sack of grain. Stone swallowed sound. The air inside was colder than outside, as if winter kept a private room here. Wax and damp mortar stung his nose. Candles burned along the aisle, their flames steady, until Tom looked closely and saw the faint blue at every tip, like bruises on fire. Rope bit his wrists. Someone yanked it tight and forced him down onto the center runner. His knees struck stone hard enough to jar his teeth. Father Jory stood at the altar with his book open, lips moving in a prayer that sounded wrong in his mouth, too hurried, too hungry. Behind him, the bell rope hung from the tower hatch, swaying slightly though no hand touched it. Bram Holt's boots appeared in Tom's lowered view, planted wide like a man bracing for flood. "Hold him," Bram said. "If the knocking reaches the altar, we'll be counting blind." Tom's throat burned. "You're not counting," he rasped. "You're choosing." A hand slapped the back of his head. "Quiet." The church door behind them knocked. 3 taps. A pause. 2 taps. The whole room flinched as if the sound had struck bone. Father Jory's voice cracked. "In the name of." The candles leaned toward the door, each blue tip stretching like a tongue. Bram lifted his chin toward the threshold. "It's here." Tom's heart hammered. He tried to twist to see through the open doors, but the rope and hands pinned him. Then he felt it. A pressure like wet earth settling over a coffin. A presence that did not hurry because it did not need to. A voice, like damp wood breaking under slow weight, spoke from the doorway without raising volume. "Count." Silence snapped taut. Father Jory swallowed. "1," he said, as if the word were a spell. "We offer 1." Tom's stomach dropped. They weren't offering the blue-horned woman. They were offering the host. Bram's hand clenched Tom's shoulder. Hard. Almost apologetic, almost proud. 1, Bram echoed. "Take him and leave the rest." Tom's mouth went dry. He heard, faintly, outside the church, the village bell ring twice again, 2 tolls like a lock turning itself. The voice at the threshold did not answer with satisfaction. It answered with inevitability. Not enough. A murmur rippled through the villagers behind Tom, shocked, furious, afraid. May's sob broke loud in the dark. Father Jory's hands shook around the book. "It has always been enough," he whispered, and the lie sounded like a child insisting the monster under the bed can't cross salt. The knocking came again, this time not on the door, but on the inside wall of the church, somewhere near the nave. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. A woman screamed. "It's in here." Bram snapped, "Hold your ground." Tom's breath came shallow. He kept his eyes low, but he could feel attention turning, searching, finding the simplest shape to blame. The church door creaked wider. Cold air rolled in. And with it came a scent that didn't belong to incense or wax, wet clay, iron, leaf rot. Tom knew, without looking, that the woman had arrived. Her footstep was too quiet to be human. It crossed the threshold like a decision made long ago. Father Jory's voice trembled, forced brave. "Creature," he said, "if you are here, step forward in." Her voice cut through him, calm, tired, and sharp as flint. "I stepped forward once," she said. "You called it salvation." The villagers stilled. Even Bram did not speak for a beat. Tom's throat tightened. He lifted his head despite himself, just enough to see the hem of her dark dress near the door, the pale angle of her ankle above snow-wet leather. He did not look higher yet, because some last thread of the rule still wrapped his neck. Bram recovered first. "There," he hissed. "Now we finish it." Father Jory raised his handbell from the altar, thin metal, small, used for rites. His fingers shook as he lifted it. The woman's voice sharpened. "Do not ring that." Jory's lips trembled. "We must answer." "You already did," she said. "You answered for decades." Bram stepped forward, voice lowering to a blade aimed at Tom. "Look at her," Bram whispered. "Look at what you let in. If you don't, the collector won't stop with one." Tom's breath hitched. He felt the trap closing. If he looked, his witness would seal whatever Bram wanted sealed. If he didn't, Bram would claim Tom chose the village's deaths. The woman spoke again, softer, not to Bram, directly to Tom. "Guilt is another rope," she said. "Don't let them tie it." Tom swallowed blood and fear. His eyes trembled upward. And he looked. Her horns were exactly as they'd been in Tom's cottage, deep blue, polished like river stone, curving back from her temples in a way that made his mind whisper wrong and his heart whisper beautiful in the same beat. Her face was pale beneath dirt, cheekbones sharp, lips cracked from cold. Her eyes held him, gray-blue and exhausted. Not monstrous. Not pleading. Just, present, like a truth the village had been avoiding. Tom's mouth opened, but no sound came. She stepped forward 1 pace. Candles guttered as if they feared her shadow. Bram's voice rose behind Tom, urgent and triumphant. "Now," he breathed. "Now it sees her." The woman's gaze did not leave Tom. "No," she said quietly. "Now it sees them." Tom felt it then, an invisible shift, like a great head turning. The collector's attention moved through Tom's eyes the way wind moves through a cracked door. It did not fix on the woman as prey. It fixed on the village behind Tom, the hands holding rope, the mouths whispering prayers, the bell rope swaying in the tower. Because Tom knew the village. He could point to its shape without meaning to. He had become a witness. A witness makes things real. The voice at the threshold spoke again, deeper now. "True count." Father Jory's face went white. His voice broke. "We offer." The woman cut him off. Her voice was not loud, but it filled the church the way cold fills lungs. "You hunted me because you needed a monster," she said. "Not because I take children, because you do." A collective inhale. A gasp like a blade drawn. May's sob turned into a strangled sound. "No." Bram snarled. "Lies." The woman's eyes stayed on Tom, as if she wanted him, host, witness, to understand without mercy. They rang the bell long ago, she said. Twice. To call the old boundary. And something answered. It demanded account, and you learned you could buy winter with flesh. Father Jory whispered, we survived. And you paid with others, she replied. You chose offerings and called it accidents. River ice. Wolves. Fever. Anything but the truth. Tom's stomach turned. Memories he'd kept soft and distant sharpened, the year the miller's boy vanished, the winter a girl from the far lane ran away, Bram's father coming home with blood on his sleeves and no deer on his sled. Tom's voice cracked. Bram. Bram's jaw flexed. His eyes flashed with panic, a man watching the story that protected him begin to split. We did what we had to, Bram spat, but it sounded tired, like a phrase worn smooth by repetition. The woman's gaze finally flicked away from Tom to Bram, and the cold in it made Tom's skin prickle. You stole my name, she said. Bram went still. Tom's breath caught. He remembered the stone circle, Bram saying a second word, Varn, like a nail. The woman's voice lowered. You took it when I was a girl. You bound me with it so you could point at me whenever the count came due. You made me the shape of your bargain. Father Jory's hands shook. That's. The collector's voice interrupted, patient and immense. Pay. And the church bell above, without any hand, tolled twice, two deep rings that shook dust from rafters. The knocking returned inside the church walls, louder now, as if something tapped from within stone itself. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. A child screamed somewhere outside. The villagers broke. Someone shouted, it's taking them. May wailed, my granddaughter. Bram grabbed Tom's rope and hauled him up hard enough to wrench his shoulders. Out, Bram barked. To the well. Old place. Old payment. Tom stumbled, dragged. The woman did not resist. She walked beside them as if she were escorting the inevitable. At the church door, Tom felt the collector's presence close behind like a shadow that had learned his name. And when they spilled into the square, the village was already screaming. The square churned with lantern light and panic. Doors along the lane hung open. People ran barefoot in snow, clutching children, clutching nothing. A dog barked until its bark turned into a yelp and stopped. The knocking pattern moved through the village like a pulse, on shutters, on doors, on the wooden sides of wagons. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Always the same. Always patient. Tom's wrists burned as Bram and 2 others dragged him toward the well. The rope scraped wet, tightening when he fought, loosening when he sagged. Stop, Tom gasped. It isn't. Quiet. Bram snapped. His voice was frayed now, but still commanding. We answer. We must answer. Father Jory stumbled after them, clutching the handbell, face gray. May followed too, eyes wild, as if she needed to witness Tom's fall to believe she'd bought safety. At the well, mud and snow mixed into a black paste. Lanterns crowded around the rim. The well mouth yawned dark, damp air rising like breath. Bram shoved Tom down to his knees at the edge. Tom looked up, fully now, because rules were ash, straight at the blue-horned woman. She stood a few paces away, horns catching lantern glow, eyes steady. Help me, Tom rasped. Help the village. Her gaze did not soften with pity. It softened with something worse, acceptance. I cannot save what insists on being fed, she said quietly. But I can stop you being the only lie. Tom's throat tightened. What does that mean? She tilted her head toward Bram and Father Jory. They want one, she said. Because one is easy. One lets them sleep. Bram snarled, desperate. Enough. We give it the host. We close the door. He yanked the rope, hauling Tom's head toward the well mouth. Tom's stomach lurched. Cold damp air kissed his face. His boots slipped in mud. No, Tom choked. May's sob cut sharp. Do it. Please, do it. Father Jory raised the handbell with shaking fingers. One, he whispered, voice cracking. Take one and leave. The collector's presence reached the square. Lantern flames leaned away from it. Frost crawled over pitchfork tines. Tom saw it at the lane's edge, tall, thin, wrapped in something like damp bark. It moved without haste. It did not need to run. The voice like breaking wood spoke again. Count. Tom's chest heaved. He realized, with sick clarity, that the village had made the same mistake again, thinking the collector was a beast to bargain with rather than a law to obey. Tom spat blood into the mud and forced his voice out, loud enough to crack the villagers' focus. I'm not the debt. The hands holding him faltered. Bram's eyes flashed. Shut him. Tom jerked his bound wrists upward, rope-cutting skin, and shouted again. You rang the bell for years. You fed Winter with children. You stole her name so you could blame her for your bargain. May screamed, stop. Father Jory whispered, blasphemy. But the square had gone too quiet, as if the village itself leaned in to hear the words it had spent decades avoiding. The woman's voice carried, calm and fatal. He is telling the Count, she said. The collector stopped at the square's edge, head tilting as if listening not to pleas but to arithmetic. True, it said. Bram's face contorted. Panic warred with rage. He seized Tom's rope and shoved hard. Fine, Bram hissed. Then we give it you. We make it one. We. Tom's body tipped. In the instant before he fell, he looked at the woman again, desperate. She held his gaze and whispered something so softly only he heard it. Let them be seen, she said. And it will count them. Then Tom's feet slid, and the well swallowed him. Cold water took his breath like a fist. Tom hit stone on the way down, shoulder scraping, cheek tearing, then plunged into black water that stole sound. The rope soaked heavy around his wrists, pulling him down. He thrashed, lungs burning, kicked upward until his boots found slick wall and slipped. Panic clawed his throat. He surfaced once, gasping. Above him, the well mouth was a pale circle. Lanterns hovered around it like distant stars. Faces leaned in, blurred, shaking. May's voice sobbed, close it. Wood scraped. The well lid, a heavy old cover, slid over the opening, narrowing light. Tom screamed, but the sound echoed thin against stone and died in water. The lid shut. Darkness sealed. Tom clung to the wall, shaking, water lapping at his mouth. His wrists burned where rope sawed skin. He tried to breathe shallowly, to calm the animal panic, but air tasted of rot and wet stone. Then he heard it. Knocking. Not above. Not outside. Inside the well wall. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Tom's blood turned to ice. He pressed his ear to stone, listening. The pattern repeated, patient, intelligent. 3. Pause. 2. A voice rose from beneath the waterline, close as breath against skin. Host. Tom's throat tightened. I didn't, his voice broke. I didn't mean. The voice did not care. Count. The water below him shifted as if something rose. Not splashing, displacing. The surface bulged in slow motion, like a body lifting under cloth. Tom's breath hitched. He yanked at the rope, frantic, fingers numb, searching the wall for anything, an iron ring, a crack. His bound hands found rusted metal embedded in stone, an old ring. He hooked his wrists over it and clung, anchoring himself as the water rose. It rose faster now, as if the well filled from below. Tom tilted his head back, mouth barely above the surface. His lungs screamed. Cold numbed his lips. The knocking pattern stopped. For a heartbeat, there was only water and darkness and Tom's ragged breath. Then sound filtered down through stone, screaming. Not one voice, many. Distant, muffled, but unmistakable. The village above was paying, not with one, but with whatever the true count demanded. Tom's eyes squeezed shut. He whispered, hoarse, then take them. Take the ones who rang. Take the ones who chose. The water rose over his mouth. He choked, swallowed cold. Darkness pressed in. And somewhere, faint as a memory, he heard the village bell ring twice again, like a heart that refused to stop even when the body begged. Morning came to little Wren with a gentleness that felt like insult. Snow had stopped. Smoke rose thin from a few chimneys. The lane glittered with frost where footprints had churned it into mud and then frozen again. But the village was quieter than any winter morning had a right to be. Some doors stood open, swinging slightly. Inside, meals sat half-prepared. Bread half-cut. Beds unmade. As if people had been lifted out of their lives mid-breath. On the church door, deep grooves had been carved overnight. Tally marks, groups of 5, cut with a precision no trembling human hand could manage. Bram Holt stood before them with Father Jory. Bram's eyes were rimmed red. Jory's hands shook so badly he could barely hold his book. They counted without meaning to. 5. 10. 15. At 32, Bram's breath hitched and stopped as if his chest forgot what it was for. 32, Jory whispered, voice breaking. No. Bram's hand slid down the carved wood, leaving a smear of frost and sweat. We gave it Tom, Bram said, raw. We gave it 1. Jory's lips trembled. Not enough, he whispered, hearing the voice again in his skull. A cold wind moved through the lane, carrying a faint scent of wet clay. Bram stiffened. He turned toward the crossroads beyond the last cottage. There, standing where hedgerows met the road, was the blue-horned woman. She was not hiding. She was not running. She stood still as stone, horns catching the gray light once, eyes calm. Bram took a step without meaning to. His voice cracked. Where is Tom? Her gaze held him the way winter holds a field. In the place you put him, she said quietly. Holding the door you asked him to be. Bram's knees threatened to buckle. His hands curled into fists. You did this. She shook her head once, slow. You did, she replied. You rang twice. You answered your own call. I only stopped you pretending it was my hunger. Jory swallowed hard. Can we undo it? He whispered. The woman's answer was simple. No, she said. You cannot unring a bell. Bram's throat worked. Then what happens now? The woman's gaze slid to the village behind them, open doors, shattered windows, the tally marks on the church like a scar. Now you live in the village you made, she said. One that knows its count. She turned then and walked down the road away from little Wren, steps quiet in frost. Her horns caught daylight once, like cold flame, and then she was swallowed by hedgerow shadow. Bram stood in the lane, hollow-eyed, and listened. For a long moment there was only wind and the distant creak of an empty door. Then, somewhere deep in the village, a knock sounded. 3 slow taps. A pause. 2 taps. Bram's breath hitched as if the sound had found his ribs. Because the collector had not left. A debt, once called, does not vanish just because someone is fed to it. It moves. It counts. And it returns to the doors that keep answering. In little Wren, The worst part wasn't that the knocking came back, it was that the village learned to knock first.